This is the strawberry from Henry David Thoreau's Wild Fruits. The strawberry is our first edible fruit to ripen. I begin to find them as early as the 3rd of June, but commonly about the 10th, or before the cultivated kinds are offered. They are in their prime the last of June. In meadows they are a week later, and they linger there till late in July. Even old Tusser, who confines himself mostly to the coarser parts of husbandry, sings in his homely strain under September. Wife into the garden, and set me a plot, with strawberry roots of the best to be got, such growing abroad, among thorns in the wood, well chosen and pricked, prove excellent good. The old herbalist, Gerarde, writing before 1599, gives us this lively account of the English strawberry, which is sufficiently applicable to our own. He says, "The strawberry hath leaves spread upon the ground, somewhat snipped about the edges, 3 set together upon one slender footstalk, like the trefoil, green on the upper side, and on the nether side more white, among which rise up slender stems, whereon do grow small flowers, consisting of 5 little white leaves, the middle part somewhat yellow, after which cometh the fruit, not unlike the mulberry, or rather the raspis, red of colour, having the taste of wine, the inner pulp, or substance whereof, is moist and white, in which is contained little seeds. The root is thready, of long continuance, sending forth many strings which disperse themselves far abroad, whereby it greatly increaseth. Of the fruit," he adds, "the nourishment which they yield is little, thin, and waterish, and if they happen to putrefy the stomach, their nourishment is naught." By the 30th of May, I notice the green fruit, and 2 or 3 days later, as I'm walking, perhaps over the southerly slope of some dry and bare hill, or where there are bare and sheltered spaces between the bushes, it occurs to me that strawberries have possibly set, and looking carefully in the most favourable places just beneath the top of the hill, I discover the reddening fruit, and, at length, on the very driest and sunniest spot, or brow, 2 or 3 berries which I am forward to call ripe, though generally only their sunny cheek is red. Or else, I notice one half turned on the sand of the railroad causeway, or even on sand thrown out of a ditch in a meadow. They are at first hard to detect in such places, amid the red lower leaves, as if nature meant first to conceal the fruit, especially if your mind is unprepared for it. The plant is so humble that it is an unnoticed carpet. No edible wild fruit, except the bog cranberry, and that requires to be cooked, lies so close to the ground as these earliest upland strawberries. Hence, Virgil, with propriety, refers to the strawberry as Huma nascentia fraga, strawberries growing on the ground. What flavour can be more agreeable to our palates than that of this little fruit, which thus, as it were, exudes from the earth at the very beginning of the summer, without any care of ours? What beautiful and palatable bread! I make haste to pluck and eat this first fruit of the year, though they are green on the underside, somewhat acid as yet, and a little gritty from lying so low. I taste a little strawberry-flavoured earth with them. I get enough to redden my fingers and lips at least. The next day, perhaps, I get 2 or 3 handfuls of ripe berries, or such as I am willing to call ripe, in a small similar locality, the largest and sweetest where the vines hang over the sand, and, at the same time, commonly, I get my first smelling, aye, even tasting of that remarkable bug, one of the Scutellaridae, which we are wont to say tastes exactly as a certain domestic bug smells, and thus I am set up for the season. This bug, as you know, has only to pass over a fruit to impart to it its peculiar odour. Like the dog in the manger, he spoils a whole mouthful for you, without enjoying them himself. It's wonderful by what affinity this fellow can find out the first strawberry. You seek the early strawberry, on any of the most favourable exposures, as the size of little knolls or swells, protuberances or warts on the slopes of hills, or in and near those little sandy hollows where cows have poured in past years, when they were first turned out to pasture, settling the question of superiority and which should lead the herd. Sometimes the berries have been dusted by their recent conflicts. I perceive from time to time in spring, and have long kept a record of it, an indescribably sweet fragrance, which I cannot trace to any particular source. It is perchance that sweet scent of the earth, of which the ancients speak, though I have not detected the flower that emits it. This appears to be its fruit. It is natural that the first fruit which the earth bears should emit and be, as it were, a concentration and embodiment of that vernal fragrance with which the air has lately teemed. Strawberries are the manna found ere long where the fragrance has been. Are not the juices of each fruit distilled from the air? This is one of the fruits, as remarkable for its fragrance as its flavour, and it is said to have got its Latin name, frega, from this fact. Its fragrance, like that of the checkerberry, is a very prevalent one. Wilted young twigs of several evergreens, especially the fir balsam, smell very much like it. Only 1 in 100 know where to look for these early strawberries. It is, as it were, a sort of Indian knowledge acquired by secret tradition. I know well what has called that apprentice who has just crossed my path to the hillsides this Sunday morning. In whatever factory or chamber he has his dwelling place, he is as sure to be by the side of the first strawberry when it reddens as that domestic-smelling bug that I spoke of, though he lies concealed all the rest of the year. It is an instinct within him, but the rest of mankind have not dreamed of such things as yet. The few wild strawberries that we have will have come and gone before the mass know. I do not think much of strawberries in gardens, nor in market baskets, nor in quart boxes, raised and sold by your excellent hard-fisted neighbour. It is those little natural beds, or patches of them on the dry hillsides, that interest me most. Though I may get but a handful at first, where, however, the fruit sometimes reddens the ground, and the otherwise barren soil is all beaded with them, not weeded or watered or manured by a hired gardener. The berries there monopolize the lean sward now for a dozen feet together, being the most luxuriant growth it supports, but they soon dry up unless there is a great deal of rain. Sometimes it is under different circumstances that I get my first taste of strawberries. Being overtaken by a thunder shower, as I am paddling up the river, I run my boat ashore where there is a hard sloping bank, turn it over, and take shelter under it. There I lie for an hour in close contact with the earth, and in a fair way to find out what it produces. As soon as the rain begins to hold up, I scramble out, straighten my legs, and stumble at once on a little patch of strawberries within a rod, the sward all red with them, and these I pluck while the last drops are thinly falling. But it is not without some misgivings that we accept this gift. The middle of June has passed, and it is dry and hazy weather. We are getting deeper into the mists of earth. We live in a grosser element, further from heaven these days, methinks. Even the birds sing with less vigour and vivacity. The season of hope and promise has passed, and already the season of small fruits has arrived. We are a little saddened because we begin to see the interval between our hopes and their fulfilment. The prospect of the heavens is taken away by the haze, and we are presented with a few small berries. I find beds of large and lusty strawberry plants in sproutlands, but they appear to run to leaves and bear very little fruit, having spent themselves in the leaves by the time the dry weather comes. It is those earlier and more stunted plants which grow on dry uplands that bear the early fruit formed before the drought. In many meadows, also, you find dense beds of rank leaves without fruit. Yet some meadows produce both leaves and fruit, and these are they whose clusters are handsomest. In July, these ranker meadow strawberries are ripe, and they tempt many to trample the high grass in search of them. They would not be suspected for aught that appears above, but you spread aside the tall grass and find them deep in little cavities at its roots, in the shade, where elsewhere they are dried up. But commonly, it is only a taste that we get hereabouts, and then proceed on our way with reddened and fragrant fingers till that stain gets washed off at the next spring. The walker in this neighbourhood does well if he gets 2 or 3 handfuls of this fruit in a year, and he is fain to mix some green ones and leaves with them, making a sort of salad, while he remembers the flavour of the ripe ones. But it is not so up country, where they are prosaically abundant, for this plant loves the cool region. It is said to be a native of the Alps and the forests of Gaul, but to have been unknown to the Greeks. 100 miles north from here, in New Hampshire, I have found them in profusion by the roadside, and in the grass, and about the stumps on the adjacent hillsides, in newly cleared land everywhere. You can hardly believe with what vigour they grow and bear there. They are not far off commonly from where trout lurk, for they love the same sort of air and water, and the same hut commonly offers the traveller amid New Hampshire mountains, strawberries and trout rods. In the vicinity of Bangor, as I am told, they are found at the roots of grass where it is up to your knees, and they are smelled before they are seen. Also, on mountains whence you see the Penobscot 15 miles off, and the white sails of 100 schooners flapping. There, sometimes, where silver spoons and saucers are scarce, but everything else is plentiful, they empty countless quarts into a milk pan, stir in cream and sugar, while the party sits around, and each eats with a big spoon. Hearn, in his journey to the North Ocean, says that strawberries, the otach minik of the Indians, is so called because it is, in some measure, resembling of a heart, and those of a considerable size and excellent flavour are found as far north as Churchill River, especially where the ground has been burned over. According to Sir John Franklin, the Cree name is Otemina, and Tanner says that the Chippewa name is Odaemin, all evidently the same word, as they have the same meaning. Tanner says that the Chippewas frequently dream of going to the other world, but when one gets to the Great Strawberry, at which the Ibiug, or spirit of the dead, repass themselves on their journey, and takes up the spoon to separate a part of it, he finds it turned to rock though, the soft red sand rock which is said to prevail about Lake Superior. The Dakotas call June Wazuste Kasawi, the moon when the strawberry is red. From William Wood's New England's Prospect, printed about 1633, it would appear that strawberries were much more abundant and large here before they were impoverished and cornered up by cultivation. Some, as he says, being 2 inches about, one may gather half a bushel in a forenoon. They are the first blush of a country, its morning red, a sort of ambrosial food which grows only on Olympian soil. Roger Williams says in his Key, one of the chiefest doctors of England was wont to say that God could have made, but God never did make a better berry. In some parts, where the natives have planted, I have many times seen as many as would fill a good ship within a few miles' compass. The Indians bruise them in a mortar, and mix them with meal and make strawberry bread, having no other food for many days. Butcher, in his Natural History of New France, printed 1664, tells us that the land is filled with an incredible and inexhaustible quantity of raspberries and strawberries, and in Loskiel's History of the Mission of the United Brethren among the Indians of North America, especially the Delawares, printed 1794, he says, strawberries grow so large and in such abundance that whole plains are covered with them as with a fine scarlet cloth. In the year 1808, a Mr. Peters, a southerner, wrote to a Philadelphia society to confirm the statement that a tract of forest containing some 800 acres, somewhere in Virginia as it appears, having been burned in the last century, strawberries come up profusely. The old neighbours, says he, dwelt much on the exuberant plenty and general cover of the strawberries, which they said could be scented when perfectly ripe from a great distance. Some of them described the vast surface and waste of flowers when the plants bloomed in a style that, if the fact had not been well attested, would have appeared as fiction. This inimitable gala dress of nature, and the immense number of bees, with their busy hum, frequenting the blossoms and fruit, with the rugged and diversified mountains on the border of the tract, would have furnished a scene of pastoral imagery for poetic description. The historians of New Hampshire tell us that strawberries are less abundant than in former days, when the land was first cultivated. In fact, hereabouts the strawberries and cream of the country are gone. That ineffable fragrance which gives to this berry its Latin name can never exhale from our manured fields. If we would behold this concentrated perfume and fruit of virgin and untoiled regions in perfection, we must go to the cool banks of the north, where perhaps Parhelion scatters the seed of it, to the prairies of the Assiniboine, where, by its abundance, it is said to tinge the feet of the prairie horses and the buffaloes, or to Lapland, where, as one reads, the grey rocks that rise above the lowly houses of the Lapps blush literally crimson with the wild strawberries, those wondrous strawberries that spring up everywhere in Lapland, whose profusion is such that they stain the hooves of the reindeer and the sledge of the traveller. Yet they are so delicate and matchless in flower that the Tsar himself sends for them by estafettes, all the long way to his summer palace of Zakoe Shele. In Lapland, that twilight region, where you would not expect that the sun had power enough to paint a strawberry red, still less mature it. But let us not call this by the mean name of strawberry any longer, because in Ireland or England they spread straw under their garden kinds. It is not that to the Laplander or the Chippewayan. Better call it by the Indian name of heartberry, for it is indeed a crimson heart which we eat at the beginning of summer to make us brave, or all the rest of the year, as nature is. You occasionally find afar ripe ones of a second crop in November, a slight evening red answering to that morning